Welcome, everybody. Really, really pleased to have you joining me this morning, and thank you for taking the time. I'm setting the intention now of it being very valuable for you all. Look forward to the conversation today. So, my name is Claire Quigley, and I'm of a business called Tech Team Whisperer. And the purpose, essentially, of our organization is to help to bridge the gap between technology and business, to get more aligned, more innovative, and more scalable outcomes ultimately. The conversation that I'm going to have with you this morning is essentially around the human element of transformation. What does that mean? What does that look like? Why, after we are progressing and advancing so well in terms of technology, in terms of digital, and yet we still seem to be struggling when it comes to getting the wins on the board in the way that we want when it comes to transformation projects and just tech initiatives in general as well. So we're going to have a conversation about that today and leading people through change. Um, Before I start, I would like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I'm on Wanneroo people's land today, and I'd like to pay my respects to the peoples on the land of which you're all sitting on, wherever that is, today as well, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. And this is actually a lovely photo I had the privilege of taking myself. I got to take this when I was in Uluru a couple of years ago, and it's a truly magical place, I have to say. So we're very lucky to have this in Australia. In terms of the goals today, I'm just going to open a little bit around why this matters. So when we talk about the human element of transformation, what does this mean and why do we care? And the fact that you're on this call with me this morning, I'm going to say you care and you get it, but we're just going to recap some key things. Some of the reasons that I'm seeing transformation not delivering the results that are desired. And I'm going to take you through some of those. So there's a couple of different reasons that I'm seeing consistently showing up in different organizations that I work with in this space, and then ways to address it. So what can we start to do? So essentially what I'm going to do is give you some ways to think about it, but also some tools as well. And what next? So what could you do as a next step to start to, if you're in a situation that you're in the middle of this or you're about to start a transformation or tech initiative, and things are, you want to set yourself up for success, what could that look like for you? All right. So in terms of the rules of engagement as such, I just ask, as I say, we've got a cozier group today, so hopefully this will be all right. But essentially, just engage. So if you've got questions, put your hand up. The team are here as well, so they'll answer any tech questions you have. But in terms of the conversation today, if you've got questions or an experience you want to share, share it. We'd love to hear it and have a conversation around that. And just be respectful and inclusive. Sometimes people have differing opinions on what it is they're dealing with, and that's completely fine. And we're all here essentially trying to learn from each other and take something valuable away from the day. So in terms of who I am, this is a super short slide. I don't like to talk too much about myself, to be honest, but essentially I'm from, as you can tell, not a born and bred Aussie, but I live here the last 13, 14 years. I've been born in Ireland, in County Kilkenny, for anyone who knows Ireland. And yeah, my background essentially started out for some reason thinking I wanted to be an accountant. I like numbers, but not that much. And I started out in the world of high tech. So I did my master's by research in that space and then started working a lot in the high tech startup world. And that speed and that pace of change and, jumping into things, making things happen, all of that. Then I actually went to corporate land, total, whiplash effect at the start, to be honest. And I was working in corporate again in the innovation and product management space, doing a lot of setting up, new business units, new offerings, new software services offerings to market at a time when it was very, very new. I've also worked in government and in education spaces. And I've worked in a number of consultancy firms, again, in that space of helping leaders and organizations to transition in different shapes and forms and around strategy as well. And I am also a business owner. So my business, as I shared with you already, is Tech Team Whisperer. I also have a business called Launchpad 9, and we're based in regional New South Wales, which is pretty cool as well. So these are just a couple of pictures of me and the fam and all the things that I do and love. In terms of some of the companies I have helped, working directly with them, and through my business. One of the things actually to call out super quickly, I think a couple of you would be interested in, is I sit on the board of Hunter Riff, and I'm just going to give a very quick call out to the work that Hunter Riff are doing. It's essentially an organization that is all about elevating regional innovation capability and capacity. And we are going to have our Hunter Innovation Festival in September this year. So jump online if you want to find out more about that. I sit on the board as deputy chair. So I just wanted to share that with you. I also wanted to call out, I don't know if it's here, but it's not actually, but I also am a judge with the Tech Diversity Awards. And anybody who's on this call today, I'd imagine it also sees diversity of thought and diversity of participation, particularly in the tech space. And of course, the large language models that we're now feeding as very, very important. So if anybody's interested in that, hit me up afterwards. I can send you more information, but it's a very worthy movement. That's also something quite close to my heart as well in terms of fostering diversity, both in technology, in organizations, and in everything we do day-to-day basis, basically. I've also I just wanted to start out with this statement with everybody. The core transformation of any kind is people, but that's a very broad term, right? What do we mean by that? Ultimately, it's a bit of a motherhood statement. So what I just wanted to do is, ultimately it's how people think. So how are they thinking about the transformation? How are they acting when it comes to that? There's choices you have in the behaviors that you take, right? So how do you act? And what's the reason behind that action and how you interact. So one of the things as well that's super important, and if it's not already in your thought process, that collaboration piece, true collaboration, cross-functional teams, collaboration in terms of, running pilots together, things like that. That's what's going to make the difference. These are the elements. It's a human, it's back to the people, but it's not just people in general. We have to be very intentional about what we want these people to participate in and what the expectation is behind that participation as well. So you're going to hear me talk a little bit today about guide rails and what they could look like as well. All right. So why this matters. So just before I go ahead, does that sound good? Has anyone any questions? Are we cool to go? I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna thumbs up. Hey, Kylie. How you going? So yes, cool. Awesome. Let's jump into it then. All right, so why this matters. Okay, so the first thing I guess, when I was looking at doing this particular masterclass element was, okay, well, what's the history of transformation? Where are we up to? Is there many transformations happening? We have traditionally thought of transformations as projects, so we're going to have a big ERP rollout, we're going to have a big CRM rollout, we're going to have a mobile application for our customers, and we kind of have a start and a stop. What, of course, is now happening is that transformation is a continuous element within the organization. It's not a start and a stop. There's not people working over here on transformation and then the business just does its thing over there. It's all intertwined. Within organizations, within small businesses, the stats are showing that you're going between 1 and 3 initiatives every year you're going through. So that's pretty significant. That's small businesses. And as you start to ramp up going over 500 employees, you're looking at anything between I think it's 5 to 10. And then once you get over, into the bigger numbers, you're looking anything from 15 to 30 initiatives, depending on the size of the organization. So there's a lot of transformation happening and transformation initiatives, right? Of course, that's great. We all have great intentions. And I've got this lovely image of people partying. We all start out with these great intentions, right? We're like, woohoo, this is going to change our life. It's going to change our customer's life. We're going to be able to do things easier, faster. We're going to see more efficiencies. We're going to all work together. We're going to have like the best time, right? But what's happening is we are not necessarily faced. So this is a piece of research that I think it's a great graphic from HBR. It kind of essentially summarizes the key issues that's happening today in transformation. Is we're not necessarily hardcore failing, so it's not a complete disaster. But what's happening is we're just getting average results. So you're pumping more and more money and effort and resource into projects that are still giving you mediocre results. You're not improving. So, this is in the last 10 years and we still haven't managed to figure this out. So what's happening? You know, we're seeing more change management elements. We're seeing more people in tech being thrown, you know, tech teams being thrown at projects. We're putting more into it, but we're still not getting the results. So why is that? And sorry, my buttons are jumping around here. Just if I'm pausing a little bit, tech is awesome, but it gives you all these little pop-ups reminders. So 80%, 85% of transformation projects fail, up to 85%, right? But it's not because of the tech. You know, you've never heard somebody sitting there going, well, you know, we all have a whinge, me this morning about Microsoft Teams. But you know, we have a whinge about technology, but technology in itself is not the problem. It's the humans that are either using it or developing or adopting it or helping people to change with it, essentially. So really it's around your mindsets, your behaviors, the alignment between you and what's expected of you and the end result of the strategy that's been directed, and the leadership behind that. So the resourcing. How is it being communicated? How are the expectations around the how being set as well as the why? So all these things we're going to drop into today, but ultimately I just wanted to set the scene in terms of we are not getting any better in terms of our results. There has to be another way. Okay, so what I'm going to share with you now is some of the reasons why I'm seeing the transformation not happening as effectively as leadership would like. So this is what I'm seeing in the field. Love your thoughts, give me your insights, share your stories. We'd love to hear it. But also, what can you do? Okay, and what's the things that I've seen get results? And I'm going to share that with you as well. So in terms of the challenges, you know, this poor little girl is having a rough morning, right? But these are the challenges that I'm seeing, okay? So friction between teams and said or unsaid, okay? So sometimes you've straight up, particularly in tech teams, that can be pretty you know, black and white. Is kind of like, right, this person's, you know, traditional IT versus digital, for example. You can often see friction in that space, and it's quite open and verbal. All right, you see that friction, but then there's unsaid friction. So this is where things, people just, you know, plug holes. They're not working well together. They don't really invite each other's to meetings, or they're not including people in things that they should be included in. There's friction happening there. It's just not as evident, and that can be actually a lot more damaging over time because it's not addressed, because you know it's not the squeaky wheel element. Projects are drifting off track, but we don't know why. You know, it's kind of like, well, we look at the roadmap. It's telling us giving us all the dashboards, you know, all the lights, all the traffic lights, and it's telling us we're either, you know, amber or green. So I don't know why this is going so off track. Conflicting versions of what's really happening. That's a big one, right? You go and you talk to your head of tech, and he or she is talking to you about, yeah, everything's, you know, we've got a roadmap, we're progressing well, things are happening, we're doing some discovery with the customer, things are happening really well. You go and talk to the GM of sales, they're pulling their hair out because they can't get what they need to the customer on time, or because there's been new processes implemented back of house. What's really happening is that the salespeople are not now able to I guess, deal with the customer variations, for example, in as quickly and timely a way as was originally promised. So, you know, the project is doing technically what it's doing, but it's actually not doing what the human needs. So this type of stuff starts to emerge. People are working really hard and they think they're doing the right thing, but it's actually not the right thing. So they're just putting the head down, going harder, right? And then, you know, it's like, but I'm trying to help you. And you're like, you're really not helping me because you've manually tried to fix all the things. And because of that, we've now missed opportunities, for example. Decision making is flawed. I see this a lot. And flawed is probably a harsh word. I don't mean it, you know, it's just you get so much data coming at you, right? And sometimes there's a tendency to go, well, this is a tech transformation or a digital transformation or an initiative. There's a tendency to go, well, I suppose I should, you know, give most of my attention to what's happening in that tech space. But it's actually, whereas actually what you really need to be doing is looking at that and taking that as an insight, but actually going, I need to be making the decision with the lens of the human over it, the human being your people and the human being your customer, right? And we tend to go, I'm putting my trust, particularly CEOs and leaders who are not tech savvy, you know, and we're all tech savvy in our own way. I have never written a line of code, but I still, you know, understand enough to go, okay, we need to ask more questions here. Speed, too fast, too slow. All right. And the bigger your organization is, the slower you're responding. and people are resisting that. Or sometimes in scale ups, you're just going too fast. People are really, they're scrambling, trying to catch up. And that can be really detrimental in terms of change fatigue, which of course leads to the next line. Everything is feeling exhausting because you're just constantly, you're on Slack, you're on Teams, you're on whatever, you're getting all your messages, you're constantly doing stuff, you're doing the day job and trying to help with the process redesign so that you can automate that, for example. Good money's following bad, and fires are still happening everywhere. So this is some of the challenges I'm seeing in the field regularly. Has anyone any thoughts on this? Do people relate to this? Is this something that's showing up in your organization? We got any thoughts? We got thumbs up. That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So this for me is the core problem. If I was to put it, literally in one slide, what's going on? Like, why are we not hitting the wins? So, and let me give you an example. So I was talking to a CEO recently, and it's a smaller organization, so she's a bit more hands-on, which is cool. And they're a services-based business. And essentially, they were building out this platform, which is going to create a whole new level of service for her client base, which is amazing, and it's going to be fantastic. So they started to progress it, and this particular organization, they were moving it forward. It started to look really good, but then the CEO was like, "Okay, I need to put this on hold because I've got to focus. There was something else happening, so they're like, I need to focus on this. Well, let's come back to it." In the meantime, the tech team were like, yeah, but it's going so well. These particular people went and they just actually went and continued progressing the development of the platform, but they kind of went off on their own little pathway and they developed in their head what they thought was amazing feature set. It was not what the CEO wanted and it was not what was needed by the end customer, but it looked awesome. It was great, but it was not what was needed. So they kind of went from 90% ready with a view to 10% being addressed, when she got back to it, to she actually was like, Claire, now I'm back at 50% because I've got to take out all this stuff and rework things that are not what I want in the system. So, that's what happens, right? It's like we think this is happening. This is what is happening in the business. And actually what should be happening is another circle in itself, right? So that's what I would say is the core problem when it comes to that transformation piece. And if you think about anything you're working on, what you think is happening and somebody else thinks is happening, they can be sometimes very different things depending on your worlds. So what I'm now going to go into is some of the reasons why this is surfacing. Why are we getting these issues happening? And again, jump in, ask questions, give examples, share links, whatever works for you. Love to get your involvement. So the first of these, and nobody's going to be surprised at this, right? No one's surprised, but we still haven't got it right. Progress is tracked, but it lacks meaning for the business. So, I have a statement in here. There's lots of roadmaps, there's reports, there's Microsoft scores. This is our maturity in terms of our data lakes and in terms of our data warehousing. This is where we're at in terms of our governance. There's all this fabulous stuff, but it's not connected back to the business effectively. So what's happening is the CHRO is going, okay, cool, we're making progress, but how is this helping my people, on board faster, for example, or how is this helping my people get the forecasts they need right now to do their job? How's the COO or the operations person going, cool, how is this creating more efficiencies in the work that we're doing? How are the marketing, customer experience people being affected by this? Are the right is the right progress being tracked effectively? Like what I shared earlier on, the tech person's going, cool, we're progressing. The salesperson's pulling their hair out because the impact of the technology, whilst it works well, it has created more issues for them downstream in terms of onboarding their customer. Teams are optimizing for deliverables, but not for outcome, which hampers innovation also. And KPIs are not connected to the end result. So there's almost a sense of the people just can keep working as normal, BAU. All this cool transformation stuff's happening here, but there's no hard line connection. And it is a bit of a, it takes time to get this, but the intention should be there. There should be KPIs treating me as a person with my roles and responsibility, helping me understand how I'm delivering and what's going to happen in 3 years' time. There has to be some connection where possible. And then, of course, the metrics are used as comfort and control rather than an insight. So we can sit there sometimes, particularly if we're reporting to a board, and the board's asking questions, you're like, hey, we're doing the things. We're looking at we've got all these reports and all these dashboards and all these traffic light systems and heat maps and all this fabulous stuff. But actually, it's a source of comfort, not actually, is still the right investment for us in our organization right now? Those questions are not necessarily, they may be asked, but they're not necessarily being answered by the metrics that we've put in place. So think about what's meaningful that's going to tell you, are you truly on track based on the why you're doing this in the first case? The next one, which I find really interesting. So this is something, anybody online heard about the cargo cult mentality? Cargo cult? Anyone come across that? No, I can kind of see. I don't know. People are. I have to go on chat if anyone has. Oh, we have a new message. No. Okay, cool, Miriam. All right. So basically, this is a phenomenon. It's really interesting. And I only came across it recently, to be totally honest, but I was like, this is exactly what it is. So essentially what has happened, so I think it was World War II. So what was happening in the Pacific Islands was, Japanese and American cargoes, they were using, they had runways in the Pacific Islands to deliver food and healthcare and all the things that armies require when they're in war. And it was on these runways. So basically, what happened then was, of course, when the war ended, all the Americans, Japanese, and so on left the island. They went back to their respective homes and camps and so on. But what happened was a number of years later, some people have visited the Pacific Islands and they noticed this phenomenon where people were still going out. So the natives of the islands had seen all these cargoes coming with all this magnificent food and healthcare and all of that, and they were benefiting from it, right? And then this just stopped. But the people were still going out and they'd made like goggles, like in when people are doing the airplane directing and they were waving sticks with fire and they were doing the things. And they were still expecting this magnificent plane to come out of the sky and deliver them food and deliver them healthcare and deliver them all the things that they loved. But of course, that wasn't happening. But they kept doing the things, right? And this is what we do sometimes in the workplace is we do the things. We don't connect back to the why. So if I just keep pulling these reports or I keep doing, like sitting in these meetings, whatever it is, right? If I just keep doing the things, but I'm not connecting to the why, but I'm not getting a result. I'm not using any insights to actually pivot why I'm doing this. It's like, am I doing good work, valuable work, or am I just doing the things because I can say, hey, I'm still doing my job, I'm still doing the things that are on my job description, but that's actually no longer relevant or it's not getting the results anymore because we're at that pace of change, right? There's this safety in ticking boxes. And I see this all the time. People are like, yeah, especially people who are a bit afraid of change. They're like, hey, I'm ticking the boxes. You've told me I have to have everything done by the end of the week. I've done the stuff, but is it valuable stuff? Or is it, am I just waving the sticks, hoping a cargo plane is going to drop and give me some food? So it's really interesting mentality that happens sometimes. There's a disconnect in terms of value and frustration can set in as well. So it's really interesting, and I do see this a lot. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with this, is this a duck? Is this a bunny? It's quite it's an interesting thing. But the reason I've got this here is, and again, this is an example, but everyone thinks they're doing the right thing. But what I give direction as a leader, and sometimes the team can run with that, but there's not the check-ins. We're not going, okay, I've let you run with that. We need to loop back. We need to make sure this is still what we want. There is a tendency, again, and I love tech teams, but there is a tendency, particularly with tech people, they get so excited. It's like, cool, right, let's just go. And they go gung-ho in terms of delivery, doing sprints, doing testing, all of that stuff. That's awesome. But is it checking back in with the actual original purpose of why they're doing this? That can cause some friction too, because we've got good intentions, we've had great meetings, it all sounds really cool, but essentially, as I said here, they all nodded and then we completely, yeah, this is not only in tech, I agree, definitely. We all nodded and then built completely different things. And this is where, again, we can make assumptions and go, well, I've told Sam this is what I needed. Why the hell did he go and do that? Instead of going, hang on, did I check back in with Sam or loop in and go, can you give me an update and let's, go back to the original reason why? And this again is because we're in that speed and there's so much coming at us. So we're like, hey, I'm throwing this ball to you. I've got to go and play over here. Can you look after that? But again, as leaders or as managers or people who are involved in this heavily, we need to make sure, particularly for people who are new to this, that we're checking back in with them. All right. Fear, fatigue, and resistance. This one I thought was really resistant or interesting. And what I guess is interesting about this as well is sometimes we get so focused on the resistance rather than going, let's flip it and look at participation, right? But this is the language that I still see a lot in, our good old Google searches and papers and all this. I see a lot of the word resistance, I guess, in different research papers and things as well. But what's really interesting about this, and I wanted to share this stat, was 31% of employees admit to actively sabotaging Gen AI projects today. And what's really interesting about this is the majority of those are young employees, not, the baby boomers and the millennials and all of that, right? It's the younger employees, which is super interesting because you're like, whoa, I thought you'd be so all over this. But there's something going on there, right? And there's too much too fast. People are just like, whoa, you're expecting me. There's an element of being expected to figure it out. So it's kind of like, hey, I want you to do your job, but I want you to now do it with Gen AI, or I want you to do it using this new platform. So basically, you do your old job, but now you've got to figure out how to work with the new platform to do the job. And if that's kind of the conversation that's being had with you, you're going to you are going to be resistant to that, and you're going to get tired because you feel that you've just had things thrown at you all the time. And as I say here, it's not actually laziness. People are not lazy. It's just they're overwhelmed or they're afraid. They're pretending, hang on, are you taking my job if I start to use this stuff? What's this going to look like? Why would I invest in this? It's not a safe space for me. That sort of stuff comes up, and people just shut down. They're actively against it, or they sabotage. And like 31% is a high stat, right? High stat. So again, this is another major reason I see transformation projects. We kind of tend to gloss over it, or we put in traditional change management tools, which can be a little bit too linear and or a little bit too slow in terms of how they can help people to address the technology and digital aspects, which are constantly moving and a little bit more elusive in terms of how they're adapted in the organization. This one, which I love, it's a cute little kid as well, but is the innovation confusion. So how many times, and I'd love anyone's thoughts on this, but hey, I've installed Microsoft Copilot, and I know I sound like I'm bagging out Microsoft. I'm not, but I've heard this sentence like, I've installed Microsoft Copilot. I was told I get 30% efficiencies. Where are these efficiencies? And you go, okay, cool. Talk to me about that. So, and of course, what happens is they were told they get efficiencies on certain processes, which people don't necessarily manually do today. It's all you have to really dig into what efficiencies you're going to look for, right? But many leaders can essentially assume, hey, I've got tech, so that means I'm automatically going to get more innovation. That's not the case. And if you're currently innovating, you're quite effective in your innovation and you want to grow your innovation, don't assume by pumping some tech project in or product in that that's going to happen automatically. You've got to join the dots. You've got to join the dots. Innovation is a process in its own right, and it's a way of working in its own right. So you need to make sure that that is empowered, not anchored back by technology. All right. So this is one, again, I see people just going, hang on, innovation's not happening in my organization. It's stalled. We're not moving. We're not agile enough anymore. Our customers are not happy with how we're testing products with them, etc. So that's where you start to see surfacing. Then of course we've got the thinking as a passenger versus a driver, right? So, and like if you think about it, it's you're going on a road trip, right? You're going with your bestie, or you're going with your better half, all those things, right? And if you're driving, you're going to be looking at your GPS, right? Or depending where you're driving in America or Australia or Ireland, you're going to be looking at your dashboard. You're going, okay, GPS, cool, that's where we're going. But you're also going to be looking at the road in front of you and going, okay, cool, this truck's traveling a little bit fast. I'll just pull up a bit, or hey, I can see somebody coming out from the left here. I'm just going to slow down in case they don't see me. You're constantly aware of what's going on, not just in the data in front of you. You're observing. You're going, okay, what are the signals here that are telling me, cool, everything's good, or hang on, I'm going into dusk. There's going to be probably a couple of roos. Maybe slow down a bit. There's all those things, right? If you're a passenger, you're not that active, right? You're sitting there and you're going, I'm sitting beside my bestie, we're going somewhere, and you've got your dashboard. You're looking at that, you're going, okay, GPS is telling me, right, I'm going to be in Dubbo in 3 hours. Cool. And you kind of sit back and just watch the GPS, but you're not really too worried about it, right? Totally different mindset because you're just going, cool, GPS is telling me this. If suddenly, there's a massive accident 2 kilometers ahead and you're all unblocked, you're like, whoa, how did that happen? Whereas the driver's probably going to be going, oh, hang on, there's people are slowing down here. I've seen something on GPS. I'm going to see if I can take a reroute, right? You're a lot different mindset. So what I see sometimes is, and I had this really great conversation with a board director recently, and she was like, Claire, what I find very interesting is where the decision's being made and who's controlling those decisions. So it can be two different things. So, the leadership will be making decisions, that's where it's being made, but who's controlling it? So are they taking the input of only one type of function in the organization? So the technology only, for example, and they're like the CIO or the head of tech or whatever is coming in, they're reporting on things, and the leadership are making decisions based on just that one lens, and you're not looking at all the signals. You're not looking for the human. And as I say here, you can't lead through transformation by only looking at the dashboard. You have to see what's actually around you. So if there's people that are not happy with, how the processes are now being rolled out, or there's things being missed because a lot of stuff is inherent in people's heads and it's not being taken into account, that's the sort of stuff. These are the signals that you need to be looking out for. It's not just the system, it's the signals that you need to be looking for as well. And I do see this a little bit as well. And again, it's just there's so much coming at you at such a velocity. There's a tendency to go, cool, well, it's a tech transformation, so let's get the tech people in. It's tech, it's humans first, right? So we've got to remember that and not default to seeing the dashboard and not look at the signals around us. Yes, fear-based thinking can create sabotage resistance. Yes, Suzanne, thank you. That is such a good observation. Thank you for sharing that. And then this is just the final one I'm seeing, I guess, in terms of, these are the reasons why transformation is struggling. All right. And it's not just, we don't want to do this. These are the things that happen. There's cultural and communication breakdown. So often there's either different languages or different meanings assigned to things. So, I was recently in interviewed somebody, and like what they were classing, we were talking about a particular process and how that was going to be rolled out or digitized, and also how that was going to be rolled out for a new customer base. But this individual's definition of what a tier one customer was, and somebody else's definition of a tier one customer, they were in different teams, and it was completely different definitions were attached to it. For example, it's the same customer, it's the same, people that are receiving the service, but that's going to create issues, right? Especially which element is going to be digitized. So different languages, different assumptions, and even when the intentions are good, people, it's silos on spaghetti, which is a great term, I think, but we don't have the visibility. Parts of things happen over here, but when the handshake happens into other parts of the business, it just goes into another part of the business, and you just hope that eventually gets out the door to the customer, essentially. That is not going to serve any successful transformation project. So that's something else that I wanted to share with you. So in summary, what's potentially holding people back? What's holding the transformation back more so than people, I guess, people obviously being the core, the misaligned metrics. Yeah, we're going for the safety and the control metrics, and then the cargo cult mentality. We're doing the things, so the doing the things, we're hoping stuff will just start happening. We're just hoping, essentially what's going to happen there. Good intentions, unintentional outcomes. People think they're doing the right thing, but they've gone and we are not checking in with them to make sure that it's still aligned back to what the expectations are. Fear, fatigue, and resistance, like I shared, people are actively sabotaging some projects now because it's just too much coming at them all the time, and it hasn't been broken down in ways people can digest. And there's innovation confusion. Why are we not innovating as effectively anymore? Or why are we not able to innovate more? It's because we've assumed technology is innovation. It is not. They are two different entities. They enable and empower each other, but they're not the same thing. Driving from the passenger seat. We've got the dashboard, we've got to watch for these signals, we've got to watch for what's going on around us, particularly from the key teams, the high impact teams in your organization, and the silos and spaghetti communication. So, and again, from a leadership perspective, Am I just communicating? Sometimes, leaders will communicate to, say, their managers and then hope the managers send the messages out somehow. And what happens there is it gets mixed, depending on the managers and their appetite and their understanding of what's being expected. It can have very different outcomes. So really, from a leadership perspective and from a management perspective, that consistency in messaging and that consistency in communication style is extremely important. Extremely important. I cannot emphasize that enough. All right. So how are we doing? Does that make sense for people? I've seen a couple of really good statements here. Does that make sense for people? Is there anything else that I've missed or you disagree with? I love this. Nobody's disagreeing with me. All right. Oh, makes sense. Yeah. How to overcome it. It's a hard part. Yes. 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 100%. Yes. Yes, Kylie, you're welcome. Yeah, all good. Hey, Conrad. Yes. Okay. Amazing. All right. So what can we do? So there's a couple of things we can like, again, this is how you think about it. And because you've got a different awareness, my intention is that, obviously we're just on a whatever 55-minute session this morning, but it's about, okay, I'm aware of this. Let me look at how we're doing this internally at the moment. What could I change about this that might start to shift the needle a bit as well, right? So the first thing in terms of the metrics, look at the signals as well as the systems. So come from a human first piece, right? Because, and apologies to any CFOs or finance people in the room. Sometimes the CFOs get all the limelight because they've got the numbers and the numbers give, we're either doing good or we're bad, or, what's our growth, what's our churn, where are we going? Well, we don't necessarily, we almost whittle everything back to numbers that are attached to the systems rather than going, what are the indicators that are telling us from a human first perspective, we are on track, we are delivering for our people and we're delivering for our customers. That's what we need to be thinking here. Like, numbers are really, really important, but numbers and indicators, right? Look human first. Articulate the value to the business consistently. So back to my earlier point. Okay, so I'm in the room, I'm presenting. How is this digital transformation increasing efficiencies within the organization? How is it improving the customer experience? How is it helping people do more valuable and less busy work, right? How are people generating gains in productivity and revenue increases? So a really interesting share just quickly on the third point there. One project that I was involved in, or one piece of work I was involved in, there was a whole piece of work around increasing access to data so that people could make better forecasts, they could do the work faster, they could, make more informed decisions. That was all fantastic, right? Because people were using amazing Excel, of course, and they were spending hours, right? You've got your macros, they're pulling data from different things, they're creating, spending hours doing these spreadsheets. So the tech people were like, hey, we've put all this data, these data lakes together, it's all in a certain platform, people have access to it now, we can run, we've got Power BI, all this cool stuff, right? So on one side, you're looking at this going, awesome, that looks great. Then what was actually happening was people were not using the data. And when we dug into it, what was happening was people didn't trust it because they're like, that's shit data. Like, we're not going to use that. That's not telling them the right picture. So because there was two totally different experiences of what the data should do and also the integrity of that data. And it was really interesting. So just this is why you need to have this type of lens over your metrics. You don't just go, oh, cool, we've now got, we're all set up in Snowflake. That's cool, but are people utilizing it and adopting it, and why not? And if that's the case, we need to get to the bottom of that because otherwise we have a dead investment here. Okay. Embed a pull the cord early. Stop just pushing on and treating it like a project that has to be done. If it's not working, pull the cord, find out why, and then start to work around that. Okay. Enable decisions that are meaning making and not reactive. Governance. We're pretty, We're not really there in Australia when it comes to governance, right? Europe will be more progressive here. Look to the EU for the guidelines because that's probably most likely what's going to come in to Australia. So you've got like 5 levels of risk when you look at data in and you're looking at your transformations in Europe. Look to that as your governance model for here. And you can look for it's pretty easy to find it all online. But most likely we're just going to look to there for best practice, and it'll start to come in more in Australia. At the minute, I think it's like one level of governance, which is high risk. So everything's put in a high risk bucket, right? That's not really going to serve when you want to move fast and test and get results quicker. So essentially, we've got as well. I've just put this in as like, let's not put everything in the one bucket. If something happens, if the data is not being used effectively, is that something that's up here where it's like, oh, it's actually not really going to impact? And you could have a visual like this in the room, right? You say, okay, pin the bomb or the impact on the yacht, right? And you just go, okay, well, is this something that's maybe just going to sit up here? It's not going to have a major impact. Or is this gonna this will sink the whole project if we don't get this addressed immediately? And sometimes actually having a visual um, creative model. Something like this, super simple, actually is really, really helpful because people don't feel like they're being tied to one particular figure. They feel like they're being tied to, hey, I can put the thing in the middle, but I'm not being like, Claire put it exactly at this angle on this time. It's like, I just think it's medium risk. And it just helps people to come forward with where they truly believe things are at, but not to the point that they feel they need to know everything. So it's a little bit of a safety play too as well, but also creative, which is pretty cool. All right, so look at this when you're looking at your metrics. How many times have we, and I've done this, have we said, hey, people don't want to get the bus, we've got the bus, just get on the bus. Everyone get on the bus. If you're not on the bus, get off the bus. And you hear all these sort of terminologies in the organization, right? And it's true. We need a bus. Somebody needs to be driving the bus, and we're going in a direction, and that's amazing. But sometimes we forget that, there's some people that will never get on the bus, and that's okay, and they will find other paths in life, and that's all right. But there are some people that are just a little bit hesitant, or they might have been there longer. They're kind of like, oh, I'm a bit worried, like what's expected of me? How does this work in my new world? And so on. Give them a goddamn ticket. Okay, Scott, hey, you need a little bit of extra support here. How can I help you? Or help, how do I coach? What do you need to feel like you can get on this bus with us? All right. We sometimes it's like one or the other. You're on the bus, you're not. It's actually let's give them a ticket. Okay. Looking at coaching, link transformation, to the one-on-one conversations. So sometimes as well, when you're in having meetings with your reports or you're reporting up, right? So for whoever's in the room here, go, hey, I want to add this transformation to my review. So when I'm sitting down for you in my one-on-one, so you're asking me about how this project is going, maybe, depending on the relationship, sometimes I've seen categories like people are like home life. You don't need to tell me, but just, if it's going good, awesome. If it's not so good, at least I know it's impacting maybe what's going on in the workplace. You're going to be looking at the work that's been done, like your core responsibilities, but also add in transformation. How is this impacting you? How are you feeling about it at the minute? What would help you? Proactively. And this is a conversation, right? Just add it into that one-on-one piece when you're having the conversation and be intentional rather than getting to the point of somebody going, I can't do this kind of thing, or they're resisting you by being through silence, Data literacy, consider that. And when I say data literacy, I don't mean like knowing exactly how to access certain data in Power BI. I'm talking about what are the questions that are most effective for you to ask? And then let's work with a product manager or whoever, let's work with the team to help explain how you can get that information from the system rather than it just being here's like a playbook of everything you can do ever. That's not going to work, right? Welcome diverse ideas, and as I said at the start, diversity is so, so, so important. And people need to feel safe to go, I know that everyone's on anyone who's watched the Lego movie, everything's awesome, right? But there is going to be reservations. People are going to be like, I love where this is going. I really wanted to see, but I'm a bit worried about 1, 2, 3. Welcome those conversations. It is not bad. It's people informing you. And as I said, linking KPIs is pretty effective if you can do that. The other one then is clearing out the clutter. So I'll just quickly move through this one. I can talk to it if anyone's more interested, but Operational processes are one of the key pillars to transforming a legacy organization. So your digitization, your employee enablement, and not just your ways of working, but your ways of learning. Stop shoving more videos down people's throats, like getting more experiential learning. How are people, I've seen really cool things where people do WhatsApp groups and they have like little, hey, did you see this can be done with this particular feature? I've tried it and it's really like get people organically sharing. Performance management, huge. High performance and high integrity. So what I mean by high integrity is we are performing well. If we don't hit the mark, we are going to call it as early as we can, and we're going to try and do something about it. Not just keep being high performing, but pushing through at the cost of what, right? So there's high performance and high integrity, and being able to stand and own that as well, instead of just being really good, reframe the resistance. So I think, as I said at the start, can we look at this as maybe not resistance to change, but how do we help them participate better? So we put a different lens over it. And we started to see it as information, and people aren't the blockers, they're actually the system revealing itself. If people are pushing back, there's usually something else going on, right? So one of the things is the tech is cool. The tech is awesome. Tech does so many things for us, but actually get people excited about what it does, what it can do for them, what it can do for the customer, for the business, and for their resume. Say, hey, if you're part of this, can you imagine how cool this will be when you go for your new job in 5 years' time? Some people might be having a heart attack from me saying that, but ultimately we want people to keep growing and moving in either to new roles or new businesses. That's just going to happen. That's life. And I think over time, honestly, we are going to see on like the what do you call it, the seat.coms and all the recruitment sites, people will be looking for experience in change projects, in transformation projects. They will be like, hey, have you been through any of this? Because they want to know that the person coming in is not going to be resisting them, right? It's really, really, I think we're going to see that more and more. People are going to want to know what experience you have in living transformation in an organization and how well you did that. So keep that in mind. This is really cool for people's resumes as well. Um, okay, all right, Miriam, thank you. Responsible leadership. You are not Google, you're not, you're not GAFM, right? And that's totally cool. So what I'm saying here is, I guess, we kind of sometimes go, we're manifesting being a tech-led company or a become digital company, all this stuff, which is awesome. But that doesn't mean you need to do beanbags and black t-shirts and whatever, right? It just means you have your values and behaviors that are tangible. You are your organization. You don't lose sight of who you are at your core. It's just how you're now showing up in the world might be a little bit different as an organization, right? Clear context, clear expectations. I could not emphasize that any further. Slowing down to go faster. Just because somebody else is running, the 100-meter sprint, you don't have to, okay? Because if you try and do that, and like any of us who've ever tried to, I'm not designed for speed, I'm designed for distance. That's my build, definitely. But if you try pushing yourself too fast, too far, you are going to crash and burn. So think about that as you are a responsible leader, you're a responsible team, you're a responsible manager. Go with the speed that's pushing you, but it is not breaking you. That's really what you need to be thinking about here, because especially if you're scaling or if you're going into new markets or you're creating a whole new product offering, go at the speed that's going to best serve you. You can always build up the speed as you get more under you, but don't just start from the traps and expect to sprint, right? You gotta be mindful of that, because that can really, really derail transformation so quickly. Right. So we have now looked at, these are the reasons that transformation often falls off track. And I'm hoping some of the things in there are things that you are, oh, I hadn't thought about it like that. Actually, yeah, that makes sense as to why things cannot perform as we want. I've showed you some of the things that we could do, so some ways to think about it. Ticket on the bus, how we're designing, getting people to think differently about the metrics and how they're measuring. What I'd like to just share with you now is, where could you start? What could you start doing right now that would help, right? And it depends, again, where are you in your organization? Are you in the middle of a digital initiative? Are you about to start one? Are you just finishing one and you want to understand a little bit more as well as to how you can do it better next time? That's actually really valuable and valid insight too, right? I'm not going to recap challenges at the moment, just conscious of time. Um, and I'm also conscious I've been talking a lot. So sorry, I do get passionate about this subject. But what I did want to share with you, I guess, is something that I find really valuable. And I've used this with clients and it's been very successful because it puts things in different perspectives and it's actionable. And what that is, essentially is a framework. So if you wanted to look at this, this is a framework. It's a human first technology transformation framework that I've created essentially through working with organizations, knowing that this is not a traditional change management only piece, right? There's a lot more to be considered. These are the elements that I consistently find are the ones that most impact the readiness of the organization to do what's been asked of them. And then the ability to get to the roadmaps. You're almost readiness to roadmap situation, like we're delivering, we know where we're going, we're going through the messy middle, but we're okay with that because we know we're still on the right track, right? So this is a framework that I put together. And it's, as you can see here, it's got 7 core components: people and process, strategy, partnerships, customer, tech. And if anyone wants a copy of this, I'm more than happy to send this to you as well as a bit of a guide rail as well for you, and continuous improvement and innovation, right? So these are the core things that are constantly, I guess, showing up as a way to help organizations balance all the things all the time without getting overly heavy in any one piece, that is a detriment to the organization or to the transformation project itself. What I do as well is I offer essentially a review piece with people. So if you are interested, like, okay, cool, well, this might be a value actually for me to look at this. I essentially offer a deep dive where I would have a bit of a session with the person and I would say, okay, well, let's have a session with the team, to be honest, more ideally. We do a bit of a deep dive. We're going to uncover what's working. Let's see, obviously there's questions and there's relevant different aspects of the framework itself, but what's working, what's missing, what's the noise, what's getting lost, what are we actually not paying attention to? That's a massive signal that we've just ignored because we've just gone straight into this particular metric and thought it's telling us we're doing all right. That's where I go with you. And then essentially what I do is I give you a report. So it's like, okay, cool. We've had this amazing conversation. I've talked you through some of the key elements of the framework. I've helped you understand and giving you insights in terms of how things might be able to go a bit better for you. But also what's your biggest pit blockers at the moment? What are the actionable things you can do right now? And then what's the quick wins and the longer moves, the longer term moves? So I really dive into that with you as well. So it's not just that was a great chat, here's a one pager. I actually have a structured playbook essentially that's kind of like, okay, here's what you can start to look at right now. And it's really valuable, and this works. I promise you this works. It's pretty cool when you start applying it to your particular context and where you're at in your organization. So essentially, as I just said, there's an induction questionnaire, a deep dive session with me, and then the tailored report. So the induction questionnaire is just something to kind of do a bit of the heavy legwork that we don't have to waste time in this session. We just get straight into really cool questions and discussions rather than, some of the groundwork stuff. I can do that beforehand. So typically, this usually costs $19.97. Which is actually a great price, to be honest, guys. Given where a lot of organizations are at today in terms of their spend on transformation, this is a really good price point. But I'm actually pretty excited because I'm like, okay, well, that's a great price point, but I really want people to work with this and work with me. And I know I can help you. If you're on this call, I know I can help you. I know, if you're interested in transformation, this is something that'll be of worth value to you. So I actually am more than happy to offer for $4.97. So that's pretty cool. We get to work together. You can see a flavor of how I work, but also I can bring some of my experiences to the table for you to then, hopefully take value back to your organization. So I can offer you all this for $4.97. But I'm not going to ask you to sign up here and now and, do the whole 24-hour link, whatever that thing is, right? Instead, what I prefer to ask, if it's okay, is that you simply fill out an expression of interest form. Because I think the first step, honestly, is for me to work with you and go, or to talk to you firstly and go, hey, this is how it works. This is what I do. What are you looking for? Just make sure there's an alignment. So am I the right person to bring you through this, or is there something that you need differently in this particular situation? So I'm more of a fan of having a conversation first, helping you feel at ease that I'm the right person, or we actually get to the point that it's that we thank you, Shane. I appreciate it. Thank you. Hopefully chat to you soon. And yeah, essentially what I wanted to do was just put this up because I think, and we'll send this to you in an email as well. If you want to fill it out, if you want to have a chat, and then we can decide if you want to do this or not. But either way, I know this is valuable. This is why I'm giving it at this price point, and I know that I've proven it. I've used it consistently, this particular framework, and I know it works really well. So I invite you to have a chat with me at the very least, and we can see what we can do for you. If you're in that space of, I need more success, or I need faster wins on the board, or I need to be able to give my leadership the confidence that we're in the right direction. If any of those kind of things are coming up for you, have a chat with me, fill out the form. All right. And that's pretty much it. Of course, if you have any questions, oh, bang on 12 o'clock. There you go, right? But yes, I really appreciate you. I know we've had a bit of a more intense session, or a closer session, and I appreciate the comments. There's some really great insights shared there as well. But follow me on LinkedIn, subscribe to the Tech Team Whisper newsletter. I do some really cool I do interviews with tech leaders as well, which is always really cool. So they always give some nuggets as well. And we'll pop you a little email with everything as well. But if you have any questions, or if anyone wants to stay on the call for a little bit, I'm all right for another 10, 15 minutes. If anyone wants to do that, that would be great. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And hope you got some good insights there today, and also some actionable pieces that you can start to do. And we'll follow up with an email to just give you a recap of what was included, and also a link to that EOI form, so we can have a conversation. If it's something showing up for you now, that's okay. And if it's something that shows up for you in the future, that's cool. We can talk then. So yes, thank you so much for your time, everyone, and take care. Have a good day.